Welcome, Lisa.
Oh, thanks, Marie.
Now, when we surveyed the education sector, it was one of the more challenged sectors, saying that it would emerge from the pandemic with either similar staffing numbers or fewer. How did the Gordon fare?
Gordon fared very well in that space, actually. Like all organisations, the pandemic situation was a challenge, but what we did was really simplify things, and that was our broader strategy. We drew that down to two things: support and retention.
And you mentioned from the HR division. So first of all, how many staff do you support at the Gordon?
At 650.
So you're a significant employer. And how did the role of the HR department change during the pandemic? It wasn't business as usual anymore.
You know, these really big HR strategies and plans and things, you really had to focus in and prioritise on what are the most important things to do here. Make things simple for people, because things are already pretty difficult in just delivery of what they need to deliver. So make some of the processes simple. What are they anxious about? Safety. So focus on safety. You know, those sort of things became evident, really important. From a HR platform space, what do we need to do? We need to have a good flexible working position and policy that not only served the immediacy but looked into the future as well. And that was pretty much the portfolio of the HR work. Our main focus was about people connection, and that is really what we ran with for the last 9 months, in making sure our people were okay and that they were feeling connected and energised to do the things that they needed to do. We did some terrific initiatives. So we started off with a Say G'day program, which is where we actually put a small team of people together that rang every single employee just to say g'day. That provided the opportunity for conduit services. If people weren't okay, we could then kind of streamline them off into the right space. But the value of that particular program was really well felt throughout the organisation. Our leader, so our CEO, Joe Almino, just started making the calls on his own back. So it was a leader-led action and initiative as well. We developed that program further, so once we kind of knew that the time period of the pandemic was increasing, that we'd have to kind of look at things a little bit differently there as well. So we generated a program around Stories of Hope. So this is about celebrating the work that people did, or it might be celebrating the way that the teams were functioning. And staff and employers just loved reading about each other. And that was really to highlight perseverance, resilience, optimism about the work that they were doing. And so that was one of the programs. We had a suite of online materials that they could kind of consume at their own pace if they needed to. Teams could formulate their own boundaries around what they felt they needed to do to kind of maintain energy and wellness in that space. So we had lots of things happening that was all around people.
So how did that support permeate the organisation and also in your own department?
Well, you know, there's so much pressure and emphasis on leaders and leadership, and one of the things that I think that we forget to do in that space is just to take the time to care for self first. So part of our approach there was really this: as a leader, care for yourself first, because if you're not doing that, you can't care for others, and that way they could really lead by example. We worked on elements, you know, that fit underneath really good emotional intelligence, an emotional intelligence framework, and what we saw there is that leaders that utilised those skills actually helped their teams flourish and thrive.
So where did they need to, I guess, address certain capabilities, and how did you help them in that regard?
Well, it wasn't particularly a HR thing. This is, you know, really one of the things that shone through, and that is an organisation's ability to collaborate in the right areas. So this is one of the spaces that IT have just stepped up to the mark and gone right ahead with it. So, you know, really what we weren't aware of, I guess, was the levels of digital literacy for our employees. generally, you'd have time to kind of rate and rank and see where all that fell.
You had to do a 12-month digital program in 10 days.
That's exactly right. And really, what we learnt from that is change and resistance to change is just that. It's resistance. When you develop great techniques and great support and have great collaborative processes, you can really break down the fears around the resistance to change. So working together with key business areas to make sure that there were smoother transitions for things that needed to happen, such as IT and moving to Zoom or MS Team meetings was seamless, was really important to how employers and staff responded.
And did your students still continue through their programs? Have you seen people getting their diplomas and certificates throughout the pandemic?
Absolutely, and this is one of the joys from a teaching perspective. The priority remained on students and their student experience. There was a lot of energy into caring for their well-being because everyone comes from different circumstances and situations. So classrooms give connection. How do you maintain that with students? So they really put a lot of effort into that. And then, from a corporate perspective, we put a lot of effort into making sure that our staff are okay as well.
That's great. Post the pandemic, what are your biggest initiatives that you'll be addressing at the Gordon?
Post-pandemic will be, what does this new workspace look like? Managing, I guess, the variety of requests that will come through for different working arrangements, and then how do you kind of put all that together and what does that look like?
And the student experience, the students might be more comfortable now and just
Absolutely.
want to carry on online.
Absolutely, they may love it. What I think it does bring is choice, and what it's certainly shown is collaboration, communication and innovation are alive and well in organisations. It's sometimes about...
Even if forced.
Even if forced, exactly. It's just sometimes finding, the opportunity to try those things out. So perhaps where there was some mindset barriers around, innovation, practice or creativity, they've kind of been broken down. So I'm really excited to see what's to come in 2021 for the Gordon.
Will the students return next year?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the nature of students that, they'll want to return, and certainly in some areas, and really just on, our delivery, a large element of it is practicum. They'll want to come back in some way or other. So it's about developing those safe work practices. And checking in all the time that we're really living up to the standards that are required in that space.
Well, you're definitely one of the industries that has been the one to watch in terms of how, because it continued, but it continued in such a different foray, and being able to be innovative and pivot and make the changes and still deliver the service.
Yes.
And as a key institution in the region, we applaud the work that you've done. Thanks for sharing, Lisa.
Thank you.